There's a specific sound that lives in the back of my mind. It is the metallic click-clack of a chrome toaster lever being pressed down on a cold Tuesday morning in 1967. If you grew up back then, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You don't even have to see it. You can smell the slightly singed white bread and the floor wax. Step back into that kitchen with me for a second. It was a place of avocado green appliances and linoleum floors that always felt a little chilly under your bare feet. Why do we miss it so much? It wasn't just the food. It was the gadgets. Those heavy, humming, vibrating pieces of the future that sat on our counters like little trophies of the American dream. Do you remember the weight of the lids? The way the motor of a mixer felt like it was going to shake the whole house? These weren't just tools, they were the heartbeat of our childhood homes. The electric knife. Let's talk about the electric carving knife. To a kid, this thing was basically a chainsaw that was allowed at the dinner table. It usually lived in a fancy case, tucked away like a prized violin, only coming out for Thanksgiving or a Sunday roast. When Dad finally pulled it out and plugged that coiled cord into the wall, the energy in the room shifted. That high-pitched, buzzing zzz sound was the official start of the holiday. I remember watching the twin blades vibrate so fast they became a blur, gliding through a turkey like it was nothing but air. It was loud, it was a little bit dangerous, and it made the man of the house look like a culinary engineer. If you heard that buzz, you knew the good plates were out and the gravy was about to hit the table. It was a performance, pure and simple. The wall-mounted can opener. Then there was the swing-away can opener. It wasn't hidden in some messy junk drawer like the ones we have today. No, this thing was bolted, actually screwed, into the wall or the side of a wooden cabinet. It was a permanent part of the architecture. There was a real physical satisfaction in locking that lever down. You could feel the sharp wheel bite into the metal of a Campbell S soup can or a tin of cling peaches. Turning that heavy crank required a bit of muscle, and it made a solid, rhythmic clink, clink, clink as the lid curled up. It didn't slip, it didn't jam, and it never ran out of batteries. It was built with enough steel to survive a hurricane. It felt honest. It was a small daily reminder that back then, things were built to stay. The percolator. Before the world got in such a hurry with instant everything, we had the percolator. Whether it was the classic white Corningware with the little blue cornflower or a stainless steel beast, the morning ritual was a slow-motion symphony. You'd sit there at the Formica table, maybe eating a bowl of Cheerios, and you'd watch that little glass knob on top of the lid. At first it was quiet, then a tiny clear bubble would pop, then a light tan splash. Before you knew it, that glass was jumping with a deep, dark mahogany liquid. The glug, glug, glug sound was the rhythm of the house waking up. The smell wasn't just coffee. It was a rich, oily, heavy aroma that reached into every bedroom. It forced you to wait. It forced you to be still. It's a kind of patience we've almost entirely lost today. The Sunbeam Mixmaster. If your mom was serious about her kitchen, she had a Sunbeam Mixmaster. This wasn't some flimsy plastic thing you'd find at a big box store today. This was a heavy, cast-iron, heavyweight champion. It usually sat in the corner, looking like it could tow a car if you gave it a chance. I remember the way the two white glass bowls, one big, one small, felt in my hands. They were heavy and clunky, but they felt like quality. When Mom turned that dial, the motor would growl, and those thick beaters would start their hypnotic dance. Watching yellow cake batter swirl against the white glass was better than anything on TV. And let us be honest, the only reason any of us helped in the kitchen was for the moment she'd lift that heavy head and hand us the beaters to lick. That taste of cold metal and sweet vanilla frosting? That's what 1972 tasted like. The Tupperware party. You can't mention the 70s without talking about the burp. Tupperware wasn't just a way to store leftovers, it was a social movement. I remember the house being filled with the smell of hairspray and cheap perfume when Mom hosted a party. All the neighborhood ladies would gather around, and the Tupperware lady would perform the miracle of the airtight seal. There was a very specific way you had to press your thumb right in the center of the lid to let the air out. That little pfft sound was the hallmark of a modern organized woman. We had those containers in every earth tone imaginable. Avocado green, harvest gold, and that burnt orange that seemed to be everywhere. It didn't matter if it was holding yesterday's meatloaf or a batch of cookies. That seal meant your mother cared. It was the first social media we ever knew, neighbors connecting over plastic bowls. The crock pot. In the early 70s, a new gadget arrived that changed everything. The rival crock pot. It was a game changer for mums who were starting to work outside the home. You'd toss in a cheap cut of beef, some carrots, and a packet of Lipton onion soup mix at 7 a.m. By the time you walked through the door after school, the house didn't just smell like food. It felt like a warm hug. That slow, simmering magic turned tough meat into something you could eat with a spoon. It sat there on the counter, usually decorated with some kind of floral or country pattern, working quietly all day while we were out living our lives. It was the ultimate comfort machine. It taught us that the best things in life, the things that really nourish you, don't happen fast. They happen slowly, over time, with a little bit of heat and a lot of patience. The fondue pot. For a brief, glorious window of time, the height of sophistication was a bubbling pot of melted cheese in the middle of the living room. The fondue pot was the ultimate 70s party piece. It came with those long, thin forks with the colored tips so you wouldn't accidentally use your neighbor's. It was messy, it was a little bit ridiculous, and it was wonderful. It turned a meal into an event. You'd sit around a flickering flame, dipping bread or apples, and you'd actually talk. There were no phones, no distractions, just the fear of losing your bread in the cheese and having to pay a penalty, like kissing the person next to you. It was communal, it was silly, and it represented a time when we weren't afraid to try something a little bit weird, just to have an excuse to be together. The popcorn pumper. Before the microwave made popcorn a 2-minute set-it-and-forget-it chore, we had the hot air popper, specifically the popcorn pumper. If you had one of these, you knew the sound of a jet engine was about to start up in your kitchen. You'd pour the kernels into that silver chimney, put a big yellow bowl under the plastic chute, and flip the switch. The roar was deafening. But then the magic started. The smell of hot air and roasting corn would fill the room, and suddenly a snowstorm of white, fluffy popcorn would come cascading out of the chute. There was a little metal tray on top where you'd put a stick of real butter to melt from the heat of the machine. By the time the popping stopped, you had a bowl of heaven. It made movie night feel like a real event, something worth the noise and the wait. The first microwaves. In the late 70s, the future finally arrived in the form of a giant, heavy box called the Amana Radar Range. It was massive. It took up half the counter and probably weighed as much as a small child. I remember the first time we saw a potato cook in 5 minutes. It felt like witchcraft. We didn't quite trust it. My grandma would stand in the next room while it was running, convinced it was doing something to the air. There was no turntable back then. The bell would go ding, and you'd have to reach in, flip the plate, and start it again. It was the beginning of the fast world. It was the gadget that told us the 80s were coming, and that the slow, simmering days of the 60s were starting to fade away. The electric skillet. I can't finish this trip without mentioning the electric skillet. It was the unsung hero of the Sunday brunch. It had a specific click when it reached temperature, a sound that meant food was ready. It was the extra hand every mother needed, and it never complained, no matter how much grease it had to handle. When I look back at these gadgets now, I don't see old junk. I see my mother's hands. I see the way the kitchen light looked at 5 p.m. on a winter evening. These objects are the anchors of our memories. They remind us of a time when the world felt a little bit smaller, a little bit slower, and a lot more connected. We didn't have apps to tell us when our food was done. We had our senses. We had the smell of the percolator, the sound of the mixer, and the heat of the crockpot. Those gadgets defined an era, sure, but they also defined our sense of home. They are the physical pieces of a childhood that we carry with us, even long after the harvest gold paint has faded away. If you could go back for just 1 hour and sit in that old kitchen, which gadget would you want to see running on the counter? Would you want to hear the roar of the popcorn popper or the slow bubble of the coffee pot? Those memories are yours to keep, and they're worth holding on to. Tell me your favorites in the comments. I love hearing about the treasures that lived in your kitchens. If this trip back to the 60s and 70s felt like a warm hug, please subscribe and stay a while. We've got a lot more memories to dust off together. This has been Past Unplugged. Thanks for sharing the walk down memory lane. See you next time.